Asena, you just let me know when you want me to do the share screen, okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hello, good morning.
Hi, good morning. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the session. We will begin shortly in just few minutes. Until then, you could use the chat box. Feel free to use the chat box and let us know your names, where you come from. And do let me know if the chat box is enabled.
Good morning. I hope everybody is well. No, the chat box is disabled still.
Okay. Thank you for letting me know. We'll check on that.
Yes, good to go there now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, so I think now since the chat box is enabled, please do comment. Let us know your names, where you come from, and we will begin in 2 minutes. Yes, I can see some comments. Great. Can we have the others as well? Okay. Good to see you all. Okay, so once again, hello, inquisitive minds and enthusiastic learners. Welcome to another interesting Ignite session by Westwood for Business. For those who are joining the session for the first time, let me introduce myself. I'm Upasana Nambiar, the training coordinator at Westwood for Business and your host for the day. And also, let me quickly brief you on WFB Ignite. This is a series of online workshops and webinars organized by Westwood for Business. These sessions aim to provide virtual training solutions to bridge the competency gaps within organizations in the best way possible, primarily to address critical issues within the organizational context through professional development programs. WFB Ignite sessions are designed to be relevant and responsive to the current business trends and business needs around the world. These sessions are led by WFB trainers who are professionals and consultants with years of industry experience. Moving on, so today's WFB Ignite session is on demystifying finance for non-finance managers, and the session is facilitated by Mr. Thomas Dembinski. Mr. Thomas is a seasoned senior professional having over 30 years of cross-sector corporate and governmental experience. He has held a variety of executive management roles for both private and public entities, including several large multinational corporations. Mr. Thomas has served as an advisor to startup organizations in healthcare, technology, retail, and food and beverage, and as a mentor for the state-sponsored incubator and special focus programs. He has also been an adjunct instructor for both under and graduate students. Before I hand over the session to Mr. Thomas, as mentioned while registering, if you have your questions ready, you can right away post them in the Q&A segment. And I would like to remind you all to feel free to send in your comments, suggestions, and feedback over the chat box. And you may post your session-related questions under the Q&A segment down below. So, without further ado, let me please invite Mr. Thomas to kickstart the exciting session on demystifying finance for non-finance managers. Over to you.
Hi, thank you very much, Martina, and good morning and welcome everybody to this webinar. Again, my name is Thomas, and we're going to walk several different remits and responsibilities for non-financial managers, and you're going to see some overlap, of course, that they're going to read very much financial, but we're going to look at it from a different perspective of how you engage with financial professionals within your organization and how you review certain levels of reports, what's important to you, whether you're a delivery person, or a marketing person, or human resources professional. There's a lot of different variety of reports that you're going to see, and the better our knowledge is on these, the more engaged you can be to support your departments or your units endeavors within that organization, which further supports the goals and aspirations of the organization that we work for. So when we talk about the key takeaways from the seminar, we talk about the why, what, how, and when. So understanding some core financial measures. What are they and why are they important for you to have a basic understanding of them? And with any kind of knowledge, it starts with a basic understanding. And as you grow with familiarity of reviewing these kind of reports, contributing and challenging and having discussions about these reports, it's developing another language. It's developing an understanding of that part of the business that you impact. And that's a recurring theme for non-financial managers, to understand that you are a key component of your organization. While you're not the reporting side of the house, and maybe you're not on the micro detail side of the house, every function of an organization has a financial tie back. So having as good an understanding of that as possible, that you develop over time as you grow with familiarity, is a benefit to yourself as a professional and as a manager of people, and also to your organizations. We're going to look at some of the core financial measures, the reports that you may or may not see at this juncture. You saw them already, you're seeing them currently, or you potentially will see them in the future. Presentation-wise, we're going to look at the very basic reports, but they are just encapsulating what could be more detailed. So that's the what. And then we're going to look at different things about some things you may want to be interested in, or things you may be asked of you. You might have a key performance indicators, KPIs. So these are measures that you use to evaluate how is your department performing financially, operationally, client-wise. So KPIs across the spectrum of duties and remits within your organization, the mind's eye, at some point in time is going to be financial conversion, whether you're a cost center, a revenue generating center, support center, sales, marketing, what have you. There's always a financial tie back. So it's understanding, how does my KPI draw either resources from or contribute towards an organization's financial well-being. That's going to be kind of the how. And of course, kind of the question that goes without saying is, when do we want to do this? Now. The when is now. So we want to start building our understanding of financial measures to help us as professionals and to help us contribute towards the health of our organization, which is a benefit to all of us as staff members. Key framework, I'm going to do things in a nutshell. What are some of the financial measures and why they're important? I've kind of already covered that a wee bit. Look at some of the core responsibilities. I'll start right off the bat with that. Some common reports you may see, interpreting some of the financial reports, KPIs, and we'll have a Q&A session, unless we get some questions throughout the session. And I do invite you to post questions if there's something that I cover and you may want me to expand on that a little bit. Okay, if the time permitting, we'll certainly interject throughout my presentation to have an engaged conversation about maybe something very specific that I highlight for you. Okay. Why understand financial measures? Again, just looking at the deck here, the crucial measures of your organization's health. Balance sheets, some things you may have heard of. They're very common reports. There's a balance sheet, there's an income statement, cash flow reports. These are the three main statements you're going to see within an audit report, the core financial statements of your organization. Now, while non-financial managers may not have an immediate visibility for balance sheets, income statements, and cash flow reports, your seniors certainly will. That's discussed at senior management meetings. These are the reports that get presented to your boards. And if you're a public corporation or you're dealing with your banks, they get audited and they're presented to the public. If it's a publicly traded organization, for example, financial statements are generally published. If you're dealing with banks and your organization's looking for financing, audited reports are shared with your banking institutes. So again, you may not see those, but understanding you're going to be contributing towards this. You see where your efforts, your expenditures, and your revenue generations, where does that all go? Okay. And we think about that's the macro view. So that's an accumulation of all the efforts of the subsectors, your departments, your units. Okay, so you may have 3 finance teams. You have a budget, core reporting, and your project management team. All cost centers. How do they contribute? What does it look like when you build up those costs and their contribution to your organizations? So when you think about the micro view, which is what we're going to spend more time on today, that's going to be here's a little micro marketing team, a sales team, an operational team. How do they manage their finances? What kind of numbers are important to them? Where does the funding go? How are they funded? And what are they contributing to the cost of revenue? And a micro, and then how does that accumulate up? And that's the main reports. And with an understanding that the success of your organization is really the success of these core components that are building blocks underneath the high-level reports. Okay. Again, depending on the size and scope of the organizations that we're working for, whether it's small or large, these core building block components of how we spend money, how we retain money, how we earn, they all contribute to our financial health. So that's something to keep in the back of your mind is throughout your experiences. Why is it important for me to better understand finance? And the key thing is it's the better understanding you have of financial data, the reporting, and your ability to contribute and have a discourse or discussion on financial performance measures, it will benefit you as you advance your careers. Because when you get up to more senior positions, junior directors, senior directors, and so forth, numbers are thrown around throughout. How are we performing? How's the organization's financial health? Where do we look to budget? Where do we look to increase spending? Where do we look to decrease spending? Where are market revenue currently? What's our future opportunities? And all these elements get monetized, meaning we associate either a revenue or we associate to that. With the mind's eye that to get revenue or spending, by and large. So there's a cost of revenue, right? So all our operations teams, our marketing teams, our staffing needs and requirements, our office support structures, these are costs to support revenue generation. Okay, so we want to make a profit on our revenue by looking at our cost structures, so cost to generate revenue, and then there's some underlying consistent costs. So the better we understand that, more effective and efficient we can be. And it serves a couple of purposes, not only the financial health of the organization, but it's our own financial well-being. Right? A healthy financial organization, financially sound organization, with longevity and sustainability. And as things lean up or get tighter, we have to be very, very mindful of how we spend money and the kind of revenue that we're bringing in. And so that we have a sustainable profit or sustainable revenue model to cover all our costs. And that's the important element of it, that we're all a part of the business. Regardless of our function, we contribute in some way to the business success. And so understanding the financial elements of our particular department and how we spend and how we generate revenue is really important. You really can't understate that contribution. So we think about it in terms of fundamentals. Every spend, whether it's revenue generation or our building blocks. Okay, so we think about budget expenditures, capital expenditures, CapEx. We build stuff, we buy stuff, machinery, vehicles, IT equipment. These are things that we buy to do what? We want to generate revenue in some element. So we expand different marketing campaigns. So when we budget and we plan, we have expected outcomes. And financial reports are going to measure that. We're going to spend $1 million dirhams on a project to generate revenue. How is that going to perform? It gets approved based upon a financial projection. So these are start thinking about when we ask for funding, or we're actually going to start spending money. What is the return on our spend? Right? It could be a person, it could be an FTE. I cost X. How am I contributing to the financial well-being? I buy a machine to mill wood. How much does that machine cost? And what is the output of that? Their cost, and when does it become profitable? So we're operating it, we're doing the good works of the organization, but there's a cost. We're architects, we have our DCs, we have our CAD systems, and etc. We're spending money for hardware and software and licenses and all these things. That comes at a fixed cost or variable cost, depending on the commercial model that you have, that cost X. We want to make more than X to cover that cost. Invest in areas that make us money, and we slow down in areas where we don't make money, just as a fundamental. Okay, so keep that in the back of your mind when you think about what some of our rationale for understanding financials are. And I'll start with expenses. I like to think in terms of cost. I start with cost with most of my discussions when I engage with managers and I people about cost coverage, because that's a fundamental. Because you think about in terms of spending, and we need to get some of that money back in house. So we think about cost recovery or revenue, cost to generate revenue or cost to maintain operations. We have to cover that cost to be sustainable. It's like having a home. We buy the infrastructure for the home, and then we have to pay for utilities. We have to pay for the repairs and maintenance. We have to pay for a mortgage, for the loan out against it. So we need to bring revenue in to cover that cost component over a period of time. So it works like that. Everything that we do within an organization, every level of your budget line items. So we'll start with that end of it and talk about budgets. Okay, just to throw a word out there. And what is a budget? It's basically a plan. Budgets are plans that organizations prepare to project out your year or your forward fiscal measure. Speak in terms of fiscal. You hear me say that throughout the discussion, and I'll interject some language that you probably know, and if you don't, it's a little redundant for you, but it's always good to hear it again. When you think about fiscal planning, it's the calendar year or the period, the 12-month cycle that you look at for a financial year. Fiscal, financial year, so financial calendar. Traditionally, to say it's calendar based, so start from January 1st to December 31st. Your 300 fiscal period, and in the 12 months, or you can look at it in quarters, which a lot of organizations will do. So you have your January through March, April through June, July through September, October through December, so 4 quarters. And you think about how we're going to prepare our spend over that course of the next 12 months. And how do we do that? So you think in terms of how did we do last year or the last period of time that we're measuring. And depending on the majority of our organizations, are we working for an entity that's maybe been around for some time that has a long back view? So they can say, okay, we consistently have spent money like this. So we can say on a graph, so if we're earning like this, or we're spending like this. Some organizations are flat, some experience some decreases, unusual, but you generally is a steady increase. So we'll look at last year's financial reports and we'll do a review of those. How did we spend according to last year's budget? What impactors were in what impacted that budget? Were there unusual market conditions? So harken back 3 or 4 years, what happened with COVID? So we had planned before COVID to have this much revenue, these many staff members, these types of business, type of market expansions, and then everything sideways when transportation vehicles were closed or avenues, for our supply chains were closed off. Even the ability to go out and do handshakes and marketing campaign and conventions and things, that all kind of became restricted. So that's an unusual event, but we planned for that. So not the major event. There's much smaller events that happen throughout the year. We had a rainstorm here in Dubai a few months, or UAE a few months back. That compromised about a week of our time. How did it impact any planned expenditures that we had? So you look at spend, which was budgeted or planned, and how did we actually perform against that budget? Okay, so the larger organizations, the more mature organizations will take it by month by month by month, and we'll accumulate those in the quarter by quarter by quarter, and then we'll look at the annual, how did we perform? And there's always a tie back between that. So you're going to go from how did we perform, where were the gaps? We underspent, we overspent. Okay, now in a normal cycle, assuming we're relatively close, we're mature planners, you as non-financial managers are engaged in planning spend. Okay, you have a staff complement that you want to bring on board. You have, say, 10, 50, 100 people working in your department. How many do we need to do our good works according to our operating? So you have your operating model, you have your teams that perform that model. Do they align? Do we have capacity? Are we short? We evaluate that. And this is where we get into the budget planning cycle on the right-hand side of the page here. But first, we'll start on the review side. People, over the course of the year, we had 9, we underspent. How was that impacting our delivery? You think about your strategic plan. So we had budget for this. We were not able to retain. So we had an average full-time equivalent, full-time staff member of 9. We saved money financially, but did that cost us in the long run? Did we underperform? Were we unable to meet our key performance indicators internally, or maybe a service level agreement, an SLA, with our customers? So we measure our performance as an organization. Do we have the proper resources to perform? Budget analysis and versus expenditures will tell us how did we spend, and we measure that against our performance. One's not an excuse for another, but it opens discussion points. Say we excelled. Maybe we didn't need that 10th person, or we really suffered because we didn't have enough people on site at the customer, and it set us back 2-3 weeks, which is never great in a commercial environment. So we measure our resources against our performance and say, how did that measure financially and why? And so we look at identifications for need and gap, okay? And we look at both operating cycles and capital expenditure cycles. We're a trucking company. Our vehicles are getting old. They're not performing the way they need to. So we budget routes. It takes us 3 hours to run a route from Abu Dhabi to Dubai with deliveries, but our vehicle had to stop 3 times. Extreme example. The brakes are failed. It doesn't have, it's not fuel effective. So we have to make more stops than a plant. We have a fleet. We're running at 50 or 60, 70% efficacy because our vehicles are getting old and they spend more time in the shop. So we're not completing our routes on time. So maybe we're not meeting our agreements with our customers. We have under capacity of delivery, so we're not taking on new orders because we have the capacity to fill that. So it's a revenue loss, right? An opportunity cost. We could have more revenue if all our vehicles were online and operating effectively. So that's a kind of expenditure. We have more working vehicles, newer vehicles. We take on more routes. We can deliver more, we generate more revenue. We compare that to the cost of the new vehicles, and that's it's an investment. Stuff like that. And we also look at things like, I mentioned staffing several times, office supplies, delivery costs, you name it. There's every cost you can think of that you use on a daily basis is costing you. Are we effective with that? Do we have the best long distance plan? Are we getting the cheapest line service for our phones, et cetera, et cetera? So you look at that, and it might not seem like a lot, but you'd be surprised. and especially those of us who are in commercial teams, are there opportunities to look at the commercial delivery procurement managers and working with your operations team that you sign contracts, delivery from A to B? What happens if there's a stop C in between? Is there a cost savings opportunity? Is there a cost expenditure opportunity? We don't know. So we review all these things to see, is there an opportunity to get cover some cost, or do we spend more? And how can we work to avoid that? And then that naturally leads into the discussion for the following fiscal period. So here's what we experienced this current fiscal we are experiencing. How can we work towards improving that in our following cycle, business cycle? We start looking at the budgetary planning. Fundamentally the same kind of discussion. So everything we're going through on a regular basis right now, working with our financial business partners, our teams, our management teams, our staff members, how are we spending? What could we be doing better? Where? And maybe creating a revenue shortfall. What can we do differently or more efficiently in the following fiscal period? So we're planning that. And that's a regular review. More mature organizations will call that strategic financial planning. So they have a rolling budget design. So we do our 12-month budget. And as we move forward, we're rolling that performance. Here's our actual performance versus budget. Here's our outlook, our forecast. So we're forecasting throughout. Large organizations is a fairly regular exercise that they're needing to adapt to maybe some significant market factors. Again, every organization is a bit different, depending upon contract, depending upon a handful of contracts, or a single client, government versus private sector. So you name it, there's a variability to address. It goes down to that familiarity. How did the numbers for budgetary get there? What were the expectations? How are they behaving currently? What will I do somewhat differently my next series of financial plans? That's budget preparation in a nutshell. So remember, look at your assets in the lower right-hand corner. I talk about that. Look at your software licenses. These are areas where sometimes we miss internally when we run our organizations. We don't keep track of our licensing. And if any of us have worked in an environment where our ERP gets shut down, or our support branding package or whatever worked on software, we didn't remember to renew it because we didn't have a list of expiry dates. We're a week to 2 weeks out, hopefully just a day or so. We don't have our software to do our good work because the license expired. So, good idea for non-finance, because depending on the organization, who controls licenses? Finance pays for it. Is it with procurement? Is it with delivery? Delivery meaning the people that actually are doing the hands-on work to deliver the service, whether it's internal or external. But the power users of, say, a particular software package. They use it. That's their meat and potato. That's their lifeline to do their good work. CAD system and a design firm. It's a good idea for the manager. Let's understand the licensing structure. And then you have a whole series of discussions. Is the software doing what you want to do? Is it efficiency of the package design of a current contract? And assuming expected, make sure it's valid. It's going to act up to date, and there's all that stuff. It's your tool, the vehicle performing your good work. So you want to not take the job to manage licenses. That's what procurement say, well, we email, right? You didn't respond. So depending on the ethical internal processes and procedures. So what you want to be careful of is putting that full remit on, the department. Well, they were responsible for license. Then they say, fine, didn't pay, it's in the pay cycle. You want to be out in front of that part of engagement. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. Engaging with your financial, engaging with your team. Anything that's got a potential tie back that can complement your ability to do your good work. Okay? I mentioned earlier, your trucks are effective. What can we do to enhance that? Our software packages are coming up. Let's make sure they get renewed. New version coming out. Our infrastructure put that. Some IT cloud-based now is a little bit different. But if you're using something that resides on your server, are all our systems compatible? Are there any kind of issues that an upgrade that may auto upgrade per contract may present us? Okay, if we're on the cloud or any security protocols we have to be aware of. These are important things because sometimes packages change in their infrastructure. Be mindful of any impacts your day to day. If you're not running, you're not generating revenue, you're not doing good work. So that has a tieback, a real strong tieback, but it's direct operational tieback. The financial. Okay, so develop that kind of thought that for day to day, this is the vehicle through the day and deliver my good work. Here's a cost, the legal, to ensure that the toolkit, the user available for me to. Okay. You take those things when these budget line items are put in
Hi,
front of you.
Mr. Thomas. Just
Hi.
a small interruption. I think there is a slight crack in your voice. I think some of the participants are unable to hear you clearly.
Okay, is it better now?
Yes, but I think it's just a little feeble. If you could just check that, it would be great.
Okay. How is it now?
Yeah, I think it is better.
Okay, well, it used to be better. Just let me know.
Okay, again, I think there's a small crack in between. I'm not sure as to what is the reason, but there's a
I can
crack
do
in
is,
the.
and maybe I will earbuds and see if that works better.
Oh, now I'm not able to hear you at all.
Okay, Parsin, is that better?
Oh yeah, this is better. Yes. Okay, maybe with that we could just.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear you, and maybe we could just take up a question if you're
Can you
okay
hear me?
with that. Yeah, I can hear you. Are you not able to hear me?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Can you hear me now? Okay, okay. So, okay, sorry about that.
No issues, but with that, maybe we could just take one question.
Sure.
Okay. So, this is a question. How can non-finance managers build a better working relationship with the finance department?
Yeah, I kind of touched on it a moment ago. It's depending on how your organization is structured. Large organizations have business partners many times. They are people within the financial team that are responsible for your area, whether it's with the sales team engagement, whether it's on the cost side. So they could be working specific towards your particular area. And large and small, though, what's important is that on your monthly basis, I talked about reviewing variance reports, and we can fast forward that a little bit, and I'll show you that. When you look at variance reporting, like here, all right, you look at something like here's a budget variance report. So here's our current period. Then we look about budget and difference in variance. So you engage with the people that prepare these reports, which are by and large going to be your financial teams, and you have that conversation. Say, okay, our product sales are above budget, and you start to discuss why did that happen. Or over here on your left-hand side, you start looking at administration costs. How are we performing with that, and what does it mean? Now, this number here looks a little too large, so 4,700 versus 320. Is this a monthly report, or are we seriously underspending in our administration? And so it's a matter of scheduling and two things, really. Building a familiarity with the reports that you're going to see, understanding your operating plan is, I can't understate that enough, overstate that enough, I should say, for anybody who's in delivery of services or performance of their tasks. Understand your operating model. How do you do your work? How is there a delivery of the services you provide? How do you build things? How do you write things? How do you broadcast things? What are the core components of your service delivery model, whether it's a hard service or a soft service? So when you understand all those moving pieces, you ensure that it's captured in your budgetary planning, it's captured in your monthly expenditure planning. So you have the information at your fingertips to have that discussion with the financial person. So well-run organizations, they will invite conversation. I know I've always encouraged with my teams, have the conversation with your internal client. And if you think of yourselves not in a antagonistic fashion, but if you think of yourselves as receivers of a service that finance is providing, then you have a different relationship with them. They're not just giving you a week to 10 days after the month close. Here's your reports. You deal with them, and we'll have a discuss. We'll look at it again next month. Those kind of conversations tend to be post facto. I mean, something happened. Here's what you did. We'll talk again later. And then either they're going to say you did good, positive variance, or you did bad because it's a negative variance, which doesn't always tell the whole story. It could be a timing issue. It could be a staffing issue. It could be a time of the year issue. Like we know here in the UAE, there's certain industries that really ebb or do badly or slow down in the summer months. Others that will do very, very well. You know, we're an FM company. We fix air conditioners. Our business gets real busy when it's hot, right? But or say we are a sector that is dependent upon cooler weather, we're not going to do so great in the summer months. So there's a reason for cyclical or cycle behavior. So does our budget reflect that? Or is it like a flatline budget? I mean, every month kind of looks the same. So that's some months are going to do a little bit better, some months are going to do a little bit worse. And it's a matter of relativity. But knowing what contributes to your numbers, whether it's on the revenue side or on the expense side, enables that discussion. And I would invite you to, I think it's an important thing to have those engaged conversations with the financial team. You get your reports. Let's talk about the results. Again, not in a fight, because antagonism just breeds more antagonism. And again, depending on the health and the maturity of your organizations. Okay, some organizations are promoting engagement, and I think that's a good thing. Because when we're on the same sheet of music, the financial people get a better understanding of what you do and how you do your good works and the moving pieces. So they're operationalizing in their head how these financial numbers are behaving, and vice versa. You're monetizing your operational elements. And so that discussion is bringing together really two pieces of the same mechanism, but one is more heavy on how do we do the works, and the side is how are we financially monetizing and performing against it. But we're speaking the same thing. Right? Financials are a reflection of the performance. Performance is a reflection of the funding. Now, hopefully that clears it up a little bit. But you start the discussion with, by having you have regular meetings, whether it's a weekly session. Some people like weekly sessions. If you have a business partner, they can spend an awful lot of time with the organization's operating departments and certain support functions like your HR, as your marketing teams, your procurement teams. These are more support-oriented teams. And many times you'll have a business partner that works alongside of them. Their job as a financial person, aside from here's my regular works, but I contribute specifically towards how's HR doing, how's procurement doing, how's legal and commercial say doing, facility management, how are they performing their functions, and how is that measuring against their budgets? Do I understand what they do? And on the other side of the table, this is what we do, and this is how we need to spend. And that initiates both the performance of a budget and how we plan for the following fiscals. And that even if you cannot sort an immediate issue, it drives the dialogue to see what are we doing very, very well, or what can we do better? Where are we efficient? Where are we inefficient? So when we all get together and start that budget planning cycle, and we need approvals from, say, upper management teams, many times board level decisions about how we're going to allocate resources, we've had a detailed discussion, both at the operating side and at the financial side, so we're aligned. And I think that's the key thing here. It's an open dialogue and alignment between what is happening fiscally and what is required operationally. So I think, again, I said, the conversation starts with start, really. You have those basic conversations and you review these regular reports. And I don't think I could stress enough also, you're a client to the financial teams. You ask for reports. Okay, there's nothing wrong. I want more information. Hey, financial team, I see the reports. I want some more details. Something doesn't look right. Or we're doing too well. We're not spending enough. Is it getting put into the right bucket? And those of us who work on projects know that there's a whole different animal there, a little bit to how do we charge project costs. So if you think on a regular operating cycle for primarily, say, support functions, how and are these monies that we're spending being posted? Is it aligned with what we planned? And if not, why? So it creates that conversation about, the whys. How are we doing? How are we not doing so great? And we understand each other. So you challenge. When I say challenge, it's not like we don't fight, but we ask for information. And the more literate or more understanding we are the financial information that we receive, the more we can speak with our financial partners. Leading into, I'll build on the question, I'll say, and just keep going with the dialogue here a bit. So we have balance sheets, cash flow statements, and income statements. Okay, and just fundamentally, what's a balance sheet? Assets, stuff that we own, liabilities, monies that we owe, and if you take assets less the monies that we owe. So what do we own? What do we owe? Net worth. Okay, so think equity. Equity is either accumulation of earnings, net assets, things like that. Cash flow is basically monies that come in. How are we spending it? Whether it's operating, financing, or other cash uses, and then the outflows. Same thing. So cash in, cash out, cash flow reports. And finally, folks, maybe for non-financial matters, is going to be our income statements. If we're a revenue center, what kind of revenues are we generating? Expense center, what kind of expenses are we expending? And are we creating a loss for the company? Or are we creating a profit for the company? And then at a micro level, we do more budgetary line items. Here's our bucket of resources to spend. Here's how we're doing, and there's a variance. So these micro components all come forward to this high level report here, income statement for the organization. Okay, now I won't spend much time on this, but here's assets, liabilities, and equity. Okay? Items and assets, cash, receivables, inventory, prepaids in the short term. Then you look at machinery, buildings, and equipment for your long-term assets, liabilities, accounts payable, credit lines, long-term debt. And equity, you look at owner's capital, retained earnings. Okay? That's, these are just things to have a fundamental understanding of. In your day-to-day operations, you're not likely to see this. Okay? So we're going to really look at an income and expense focus, kind of what I was talking about, the responsibilities and the remit up top there, the core remit. So everything I spoke about expenses, kind of look at that in a revenue perspective also. I kind of skipped over that a bit. But you're thinking in terms of what are we doing and then how are we performing. So departmental P&Ls will behave much like high-level P&L. We have different cost categories that we have. Think about in terms of most businesses, 65 to 75% of your costs are going to be human resources. So we have a staffing, we have office expenses, we have computer expenses, phone line charges, licenses, etc. So these are things that we manage to do our good work. So these are our support-oriented costs. So keep an eye on those. We often lose track of those. Okay, but you have a fundamental focus on maintaining your works, making sure you have the right teams, that get your training budgets in place. You're asking for training. So it's always great. Everybody wants training. Everybody wants to do, maybe they want to go to a conference. They cost money. So where do we find the resources to go on a training mission? Where do we find the resources to do an online seminar? Where do we find the resources to buy a new software package, etc.? So you want to explore these opportunities and look for the benefit. There's a cost, here's the benefit. So again, going towards maybe in a language like non-financial language, you're thinking about, I want to get some of these, I want to spend some money to make money. That's an element of selling. So you have to demonstrate, I'm going to spend this money, I'm going to make this money off of that. And here's how it's going to look like. I'm going to forecast it a little bit. So you want to make sure that you're looking at how you've performed against that. Did we do well with expenditures? Did we do not so great with expenditures? Okay. And so when you're planning, you keep these things in your mind's eye. Okay. Again, you can expand it out here a little bit. Here's a simple income statement. Think about expenses for advertising, supplies, rent, insurances, salaries, other expenses. You guys won't really worry so much about income taxes and stuff, but you just think about buckets. These buckets could represent just about anything, but these are costs directly associated with what you do. Okay? We do branding. So what do? We design. What do we do to design? We need our boards. Are we going to use tactile boards? Are we going to e-boards? Are we going to save that data? Do we have space for that to save? Do we need to do prints internally? Do we need to do prints externally, etc.? So what is our product or our service to our internal client and also external clients? How is it going to get paid for? So the income statement, for particularly when you think about non-revenue generating areas that don't have a direct revenue pullback, you start really keeping a mind's eye on our expenses. And when these get accumulated up, these are OPEX, operating expenditures to run our organizations. Then we're going to look at the revenue side. So are we making enough revenue from these costs of revenue, either a support cost or the cost to generate revenue or we generate enough revenue to cover that and make a nice little profit and make the shareholders the ownership structure happen. Okay? So be mind's eye. All your organizations contribute to a profitable thing. It's a small number, $31,000. Say we are ahead of the curve. We're making money. What happens with that profits? We can reinvest in the organization. We can reinvest in resources, whether they be hard, tangible product sources or people resources, bonuses, things like that. So budget management has a knock-on effect so far as how we manage our departments, we manage our delivery elements, we manage our commercial contracts. And when we're profitable as an organization, that's sustainable business, and it gives the senior ownership structure opportunities to do different things with that profit, to retain cash. There's lots of different ways to view it, okay? And this is just a high-level example of basic cash flow behavior. It's think about operating cycles, investing cycles, and financing cycles. I won't spend too much time on it, but maybe we'll just take a quick peek at the top right here and say about operating activities. So what's an inflow? What's an outflow? Right? We sell our goods and services. That's fundamental. Whatever our goods and services are, we're a trucking company, we're food and agriculture, we're food and beverage. We're an IT organization. We produce iron or aluminum, we're a milling organization. Whatever we do, there's sales and there's a cost associated with that. Right? So you think about our gross sales. That's capturing all our costs plus our assigned profits to cover all our incidental costs. Okay? So then that's our fundamental. Maybe get things like interest received or dividends received. Cash outflows, always going to be top salaries and wages, supplier payments, interest payments, income taxes, okay, and et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so that you keep in mind what brings cash in and what's the cost to make that money. You think in terms of revenue sometimes, and you can think about outflows and cash and operating costs. You can think about that the cost of revenue. Again, it's maybe a term that's not used often enough, but we are contributing to the revenue generation of our organizations. And for most, I'm going to limit the discussion for not for-profit organizations, primarily commercial entities, because there's a whole other stream we can talk about. But let's focus on our thoughts on commercial entities who want to make money, and that's their charter to be profitable and grow in wealth and enrich our shareholders or expand and grow businesses. So cost of revenue. So we're looking at what does it cost to produce the revenue? It could be less, we're making profits so we can continue to grow. Okay? So when you think about cash flow, think about what is the cost to generate our revenues. Two components, our revenue generating costs and then our just core fixed costs, like buildings. Okay, that's if we pay for a building. We have some machinery, maybe it's residents. So these are fixed in nature, but the utilization of these capacities and investing in those capacities, whether it be resources, people, or hard resources that we can generate more money, cost of revenue, plus a profit, that's our actual revenue. Okay, well, hopefully that's clear. Okay? And I did touch upon the budget variance reports to address the earlier question, so hopefully that was clear. Okay. And then you can look at it when you think about variance reports at maybe a little subsector level, like this here was a more high level discussion or presentation of some points. Here's a more current monthly look at responsible areas for, more of a drilling and tech company. We have actual budget versus variance, and variance. So here's our amounts, it's a cost per ton, here's an amount, here's a budget per ton, and how did we perform? And this is a variance report. So you want to get used to looking at things like this, where you say, okay, you had, 2.8, you did 3, so you had a negative variance. So you're performing below the budget. We budgeted 2.9, we did this over, our budget was over, sorry, it was about 3 million, did about 2.9. What happened? And you can see our costs are a little bit lower here, but we did better. So is it a cost issue? Is it a lack of production issue? Why do we have a variance? And that's the discussion point. We have, the question was, how do we engage with the finance people? So it's a matter of like, okay, this is what we actually performed at. This is how we were expected to perform at. We had a variance. Let's understand all the moving pieces to that variance. Was there a logistical issue? Was there a weather-related issue? Was there a partner-related issue? And so maybe we have a third-party partner that helps us fulfill our orders and close that order off so we can monetize it. Is there a problem there? We have to understand all the moving pieces to our operating model, what did or did not happen the way we expected it to. This is a small variance, but it could be indicating a future larger issue. That's why we have these discussions. You know your businesses, you know what you do, what went sideways, what did not work as expected, so we can have that discussion. And then you start looking at the line. What did we do? What worked well, what didn't work? So that's where you look at something like, here's some activity basis that ties out the same number. Drills, loads, hauls, ancillary. How did they compare to the budget? And where were we high? Where were we low? And you have the discussion. Make sure things are posted properly. Make sure that you, as a business delivery person or as a business support person, whether you're an operating side or you're in the support services side, you know your side of the business, your resources, what you're supposed to be doing, how you're supposed to be doing it. You're the best resource to understand what went well and what maybe didn't go so well. And if something is a variance from the financial people, you start having that discussion and say, was it with your group exclusively, or are there tie-ins? And the financial people will have the consolidated information. Again, when you get into the partner agreement, they will give you the details. Here's all the things that were posted. Revenues, here are the costs that were posted to your account. You have the opportunity to discuss and review those. Were they in the right time period? Were they in the, was that a January cost that you booked in February, or vice versa? So you can look at those things. Is it a timing issue? Is it a delivery issue? And your fluency with how things can and cannot, how things can go wrong, or when things should be operating as expected, is a benefit. So you can have that more detailed discussion with financial people. You know it, you know your operations better than they do. And that's always a key thing. So your knowledge base is on what you do, whether in operations or support teams. You know your function better than, that's what you do on a day-to-day, than a financial reporting person. Okay, so that they're learning, developing into that business partnering mentality while you're having that discussion, because it's a win-win. Okay? Are there any questions, more questions at this junction before I jump into KPIs? Good, maybe it's a logical stopping point. Talk about it. Marcina?
Please feel free to put in your questions in the Q&A segment or in the chat box. Meanwhile, we do have one question. So how should non-finance managers approach cost-benefit analysis for potential projects or investments?
Well, harkening back a little bit to when I was talking about budget preparation cycles. So if you're looking at a opportunity to do a project, okay, we have a one-off project, or maybe it's got a longer term utility, you look at it's as simple as here's all our inputs and here's the expected output. So the output is the economic contribution to the organization. To put it simply. So we'll say that we want to invest in a new territory. So we want to expand our markets. And our project is to expand our delivery team to another emirate. Okay, we're focused in Dubai. We want to move into Ajman. Does it make sense for us to put a office in Ajman, a delivery support office for, say, FM, facility management. Does it make sense, or is it better for us to keep driving over the border and maybe lose half hour daily driving? Or do we want to invest in a service area delivery station in Ajman, as an example? So what we would do is say, here's our marketing opportunity, or maybe it's our existing client base and clients that we turn away on a regular basis. And your marketing teams and your salespeople will know that. So you see, we have 10 clients in Ajman, but we have the opportunity to maybe service 20 to 30 clients because we said no, we no bid certain clients because we just don't have the capacity delivering out of our Dubai office to travel that distance. And it just doesn't make financial sense because scheduling, et cetera, et cetera. So we will look at the benefit of, let's open up a shop in Ajman. What's the cost? We already have a fixed, say, revenue. We've been servicing 10 clients. So you can say revenue for that new office starts at 10. There's an opportunity for, say, 10 to 20 customers that we've no bid on, or we've gotten expressions of interest up until that point in time. Now, we can do a couple things with that. Anybody in the sales force will know this, that we've been approached, or now we start approaching. So we want to maybe say in 6 months' time, we want to explore the opening of an office. We know that there's a history of demand. We've not really leveraged that. We just service existing because they're close enough to the border, and maybe they're related organizations to one of our large clients. Maybe now it makes sense. So let's do a market expansion study. So, okay, we have these potential clients. We can do some market approach. We can look at outreach programs, get on the streets, meet with the people, send our marketing collaterals, sell our services, or get some marketing collateral, maybe do a demo here and there, depending on what we do. So we're going to invest those costs and say, okay, here's a potential market for us. The cost of setting up a satellite office is, say, 10 million dirhams. Market expansion is 12 million dirhams. Our market revenue potential, say, is today 10 million, but we can see jumping up to 15 to 17 within the next 18 months. We compare those two things. So here's our revenue potential ongoing, and here's our cost to get into that sector, initial investment, plus our ongoing operating. And so I'm saying a lot in a short period of time, but really fundamentally, here's our revenue potential, and here is our known costs. There's an upfront cost to maybe set up an office, and then there's going to be ongoing management of that office, whether it's going to be some FM internally, utilities, taxes, what have you, and then moving some people over there. So here's the costs that we know to run it. It's already in that sector. We know the operating costs. We have an idea what the fixed costs are going to be, and we're going to bid those out and shore those up. So here's all those inputs into the cost model. Again, talking about what I mentioned earlier about knowing how we deliver our services. That is the best way to have a discussion with the financial person is we know what it takes to do the business. So you as marketers say, okay, we'll talk to the operating people. This is what it would cost to do 15 clients over in Ajman. This is this profile of our clients. What would it cost to do that? You as the marketer do an outreach program, say, look, we've had an 85% or 90% hit rate on our sales collaterals and engagements. So we have, you put it in that, the heat diagram, high risk, low risk, medium risk kind of a thing. So we have a assurance of say 85 to 90% conversion on our marketing campaigns or our engagements with customers who have reached out to us. So we feel good about that. So when you're analyzing these things, you do revenue forecast for say 12 months to 18 months, maybe even 24 to 36, depending on the scope and scale. But, the further out we go, less clarity, but you can look at like a good solid 12 to 18 months of potential revenue. And here's what it's going to cost us to set up that salary. So that's your analysis in a nutshell. All our costs, how do we recover those costs? And you look at sustainable business environment. Hopefully that was relatively clear. Not an easy question. So there's a lot of moving pieces with expansion, investing, cost analysis, but those are the fundamentals. What does it cost and how can we recover those costs? That's the simplest way to look at something. Everything we have to pour into an endeavor, whether it's a soft cost or a hard cost, and what are our expected outputs. And then we go into that earlier kind of discussion about measuring them, because an individual project is an individual budget effectively. And so again, a big budget is a component part of all these little budgets put together. So a special spend budget, like you might do a cost benefit analysis on, is, I gave the example of building another delivery location. You look at all the relevant costs, everything you could possibly spend money on, and maybe add a little factor on top of that. And what would our expected revenues be against it? And then you move it up your management chain, you look for approvals. So that you do a cost benefit on that, and long-term benefit to the organization. Okay.
Right. Do we have any questions from our participants? You can use the chat box and post your questions. And in the meanwhile, we can take up one more question, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
Great. So can you provide some examples of how non-finance managers can identify and evaluate financial risks in their projects?
How can they identify non-financial risks? Sorry, one more time, Prashant.
Yeah.
How can
So,
non-financial managers identify financial risks?
yeah, identify and evaluate financial risks in their projects.
Okay, fundamentally, we really just kind of covered that in a cost benefit to a degree. So you would look at the component inputs, right, for cost inputs. So we have, say, 5 core factors of cost to deliver a project. If you think about a design consultancy, for example, we are going to design a building downtown Dubai. So what's involved in that? Say the pre-planning stage, pre-bid stages, we start spending money. So your risks are always going to be in a design project, for example. It's a risk until you sign a contract, fundamentally. Right? And then the risks go forward from there. So you're thinking about when you're pursuit, you think about a sales pursuit, and you can leverage this anytime you are doing a non-recoverable function. So we're designing in a bid. So we're part of a sales team, and we want to approach, say, Amar. We want to build a Burj Khalifa 2. Let's make something up. And there's going to be all the big organizations are going to want to be part of this project. So they are going to put forward a design and a concept to the builder, to the contractor. So in this case, Amar. Amar is going to build Burj Khalifa 2. So we want to, as maybe the Parsons of the world, the ACOMs of the world, etc. These guys want to put forward a bid to say, okay, this is our pursuit now. First, we engage with their teams, with our salespeople. We talk about all the great things that we do. We are accumulating costs. As my salespeople are on the ground pursuing this potential job competitively, and we're not getting that money back. And that's part of their job, but they could be maybe going after other jobs that maybe are upselling existing works. So we are pursuing a new bid. So we look at that and say, okay, we're not getting paid directly for that pursuit. And then it gets some generation of interest. So now they start preparing a bid. So you may have some initial drawings. So get your architectural team to do some maybe high-level designs. So we are spending resources. Maybe your engineers have to get involved in some basic surveys. Okay, we want to win. It's a multi-million-dollar contract. Maybe, we could be looking at a couple of billion dirhams in total cost to design and build this thing. So we want this work. So we're going to invest in it. If we have to import some experts to help us design an artificial lagoon, maybe we have to look at the logistics of the roadworks there. So there are civil engineers involved. Aside from our high tower and our big building architects and our other experts, geology, is there ground level where they want to pose this thing? Is it suitable? So we just, even if we're not physically doing all those tests, we are bringing together a lot of expertise to put forward a well-crafted bid. Okay, or at least a design stage, because these are multi-tiered things. Here's our design. We spent money. Do you like it? They like yours and they like 10 others. So, okay, now you and 10 other people, now we're going to start preparing a bid based upon new information. So you're spending, spend. So the mind's eye on that, there's a bucket of funds that we spend on pursuit as an organization. I'm talking about a large scale thing. So see, we have a couple 100,000 dirhams a year for pursuit costs. We've already spent 25,000. Now we're going to spend another 30,000 to get some drawings done. We're going to get some testing, some high-level testing, whether it's just going to do mapping and maybe some of the logistical things of the highways and bridges in that area. We're doing studies. Maybe we need some information from a legal resource. All these things start to get put into our bids because we're putting out a massively lucrative potential bid. So we want the best information. So we're spending. We got our people, our salespeople, our design people, our engineers. We may import some expertise. We may look at third partner arrangements. We may do some legal framework studies. We may do even, very low level or depending level of geological just knowledge base. Again, we're not going to do the hardcore drilling and stuff because we haven't won yet. We have the budget for that, but we want to win this bid. So we're spending. The risk is we don't win because we're 1 of 10. So we spent maybe 150, 200,000 dirhams, say, and then maybe that's 60% of our pursuit budget, and we didn't win. That's a risk. And that's just part of how pursuits work. So when you speak about, financial risk, that's maybe not, we're not worried about air conditioning in our office. We're not worried about the water and the utilities. We are pursuing a bid. We're spending. This is across all streams. I used a design build example. You can do it in pure IT functionality. Healthcare does it all the time when they're exploring different delivery services. We're doing a case study on a diabetes center. We're doing a case study on a behavioral clinic. We spend, and maybe it doesn't go anywhere. So these are risks that organizations experience on a regular basis that they set aside budgets for. And you want to be careful with how we manage that because you can't pursue every bid that comes across your desk. You can't build every service level in the medical area that may be a defined need for, or even if you want to at some point in time, you can't do it today. There's a risk. There's a risk involved. There's only so much money to spend. And so you think about those things, what's got the higher level of probability? Okay, say I mentioned about Burj Khalifa 2. We were in the running. We didn't win Burj Khalifa 1, but we were in the running. And in the meantime, in the last decade or so, we've built high towers in Taiwan, built one inside, China. We built one here, we built one there. So we've developed our expertise in high towers. So we bring more to the table. So then maybe this is a more viable pursuit for us. If we really want to go after this, we're going to spend extra. We may fly our guy in from Taiwan who built the last high tower. He or she, they're going to do the presentation for us because they just built one that's relatively similar in scope and scale. Those kind of things. So we're spending, and the risk always is we won't get it. But hopefully that scenario of sorts addresses the question. Definitely, folks.
Right. So I think with that, we have come to an end of this session. So thank you all for your time, enthusiasm, and participation in our session. I know this is quite a heavy subject, but I hope that you all have enjoyed the session and it is a useful one. And thank you, Mr. Thomas, for igniting us all by sharing your knowledge and experience with us. It was a refreshing session indeed. Dear learners, your suggestions and comments matter to us. So please do let us know your thoughts and suggestions for improvements so we can continue to improve and give you the best service. So after the session, you will receive a feedback form, which will only take 3 to 5 minutes to complete. And if you have opted for the certificate, you will receive your e-certificate within the day, which you can publish on LinkedIn as well. So see you again with another insightful WFB Ignite session. Until we meet again, thank you very much. Stay ahead, stay connected with Westwood for Business. Thank you.